Good evening, everyone. I'll call our meeting to order. It is 5:30. Today is May 11th, 2021, and this is a regular meeting of the USD 305 Board of Education. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up is the approval of the agenda. There was a corrected personnel report that's in your packet and was provided electronically to the public as well. Is there a motion to approve that agenda as presented? Emma?
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Thanks, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ann. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. On to recognitions and presentations with You Make a Difference Award, Superintendent Excellence Awards, and Renaissance Teacher. Full slate tonight.
Good evening. The You Make a Difference Award is presented to staff members whose exemplary actions support students, colleagues, and the mission of Salina Public Schools. Recipients of these awards receive a lapel pin and a handwritten note personally delivered by Board of Education member. Danella Geist, custodian, Central High School. Danella is a force of positivity in the halls of Central High. Much loved and respected, she goes out of her way to connect with students and check how things are going for them. No matter the task, she wears a smile, easily shares a laugh, and has a bounce in her step. Thank you, Danella, for making a difference. Marilyn Arnold, special education teacher, high incident, Oakdale Elementary School. Recently, while a colleague was on an extended absence and no regular substitute was available, Marilyn stepped in to help. She wrote IEPs, created lesson plans, and communicated with support staff. She saw a challenge that was not easily solved and became the solution. Thank you for making a difference, Marilyn. Jessica Owens, school nurse, Coronado Elementary School. The health and well-being of every student and staff member at Coronado is but a starting point for Jessica. Her support spans from medical to socio-emotional and beyond, including trying to make others' jobs easier whenever possible. Thank you, Jessica, for going the extra mile and making a difference. Molly Paradis, paraeducator, Huesner Elementary School. Molly provides extra support at Huesner, often bringing treats and gifts for students and coworkers. Her creative and crafty touches help keep spirits high by brightening halls and workrooms. She makes fun face masks for staff, most recently raising autism awareness. Thank you for making a difference, Molly. Tiffany Cooper, paraeducator, Lakewood Middle School. Whether working with special education students, her cheerleading team, or her colleagues, Tiffany gives 110% to everyone. She is a master at focusing on students' needs and extending her compassion and kindness to help students feel safe and loved. Thank you, Tiffany, for making a difference. And now we'll move on to our Superintendent Excellence Awards. This evening, our first group of awards goes to forensic students at South High School who qualified for state. Megan Hageman is their coach. Will you please join Superintendent Exline in the front? And will all the forensic students please line up next to them? There were 10 South students participating. Tiana Marion, Sr., Seth Carter, Jr., Emma Smith, Sr., Maya Daly, Sr., Francisco Guardado, sophomore, Denelyn Vasquez, sophomore, Lillian Artis, freshman, Jennifer Wen, junior, Adele Gary, sophomore, Ava Williamson, sophomore. Congratulations to all. Our next group of awards goes to journalism students at South High School who placed at the Regional Kansas Scholastic Press Association's Journalism Contest. Kim Warren is their advisor. Will you please join Superintendent Exline in the front? And will all the journalism students please line up next to them as well? This is a busy time of year. We will read their names: Hannah Kipp, Sr., Lizzie Franco, Sr., Autumn Dunshee, Sr., Nathan McConnell, Sr., Lexi Doherty, Jr., Evie Barth, Sr. Congratulations to all these students. Next, we recognize journalism students at Central High School who qualified for state. Shelby Dinkle is the advisor. Will you please join Superintendent Exline in the front? And will all the journalism students from Central High please line up, if any are here? Qualifying and competing were Allie Fisher, Jr., Austin Beatty, Sr., Chloe Chesney, Sophomore, Chloe Highsmith, Sophomore, Collister Ryan, Senior, Emily Strawman, Senior, Emmy Turpin, Senior, Colin Geisler, Senior, Dawson Keller, Senior, Nathan Farmer, Senior, Aaron Flax, Senior, Faith Rost, Sophomore, Hannah North, Senior, Isabella Rubino, Senior, Caden Spencer, Senior, Arturo Zapita, Senior, Carson Toney, Jr., Josh Warner, Jr., Carson Arnold, Jr., Maddie Sunrem, Jr., Mackenzie Mary. Mackenzie Maring, Senior. Rashada Smith, Jr., Sydney Raman, Senior. Congratulations. Our next group of awards goes to Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge students at Central High School who qualified for the state contest. Cindy Rhodes is the supervisor. Please join Superintendent Exline in the front. And will the Central High YEC students please line up as well? Second place winners, tied, Adia Peck, freshman, Haley Petty, sophomore. Third place winner, Janae Montoya, freshman. Congratulations. Our next award goes to a South High School Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge student who qualified for the state contest. Orlando Carmona is the sponsor. Will you please join Superintendent Exline in the front? And we invite Mason Bettles to the front if he's here this evening. Congratulations to Mason Bettles, a junior. Our next recognitions go to French students at South High School who qualified for state. Brenda Geist is the teacher. Will you please join Superintendent Exline in the front? And will the French students please line up next to them? The following two students received national recognition for their achievement in Le Grand Concours, the national French contest sponsored by the American Association of Teachers of French. Level 3, Diana Geist, senior, bronze medal nationally, ranked 12th nationally, and ranked first in Kansas. Level 1, Alina Tran Wen, freshman, honorable mention nationally, ranked 21st nationally, and ranked first in Kansas. These students ranked second and third in the state. Level 1 participants, Lourdes Sanchez, freshman, second in Kansas. Emily Newman, freshman, third in Kansas. Congratulations to all of you. Our next group of awards goes to Central High School seniors who have been named Kansas Silver Seal of Biliteracy winners. Jan Denning is the Central Building Coordinator. Will you please join Superintendent Exline in the front? And will all the Central High Seal of Biliteracy winners please line up next to them? The Kansas Seal of Biliteracy program recipients are students who possess the abilities to not only speak, but also read and write grammatically correct words and sentences in at least 2 languages. Spanish Seal recipients from Central, Jose Cavillo, senior, Minerva Martinez, senior, Juliana Munoz Chavez, senior, Annette Rodriguez, senior, Rafael Serrano Ortega, senior, French Seal recipient from South, Caitlin Bergman, senior. Caitlin is a student of Jan Denning at Central. French Seal recipients from Central, Avery Darby, senior. Nelson Gooch, senior. Sophie Lankiewicz, senior. Congratulations. Our last group of awards goes to South High School seniors who have been named Kansas Silver Seal of Biliteracy winners. Deb Cohn is the South Building Coordinator but is unable to be here this evening. Will all the Seal of Biliteracy students from South High School please line up next to Superintendent Exline? Saul Bucaro, senior. Miriam Benavides, senior. Saitali Castro, senior. Crystal Franco Ramos, senior. Lisbeth Quiros, senior. Zeta Segura, senior. Congratulations. Today we recognize the Renaissance Teachers of the Month, January through May 2021. Will they please join Superintendent Exline in the front of the room? Renaissance teachers are recognized through radio announcements and on the USD 305 website. At Central High School, Sharon Ekstrom, science teacher. Amanda Tackett, speech teacher. Lakewood Middle School, Barbara Bonhotel, facts, family, and consumer science teacher. Patty Emmy, sixth grade science teacher. Michaela Croker, sixth grade reading teacher. South High School, Megan Hageman, English language arts teacher. South Middle School, Bianca Adams, sixth grade reading, modified sixth and seventh grade math teacher. Curtis DeMars, seventh grade math teacher. Due to prior commitments, the following were unable to be with us today: Scott Vandekreek, Ben Featherston, and Jacob Andres from South Middle School, Melinda Jett, Tyler Barnes, and Kim Worth from Central High School, Seth White, Jesse Yarkovitz, Charlie Lynn, and Colin Carlson from South High School, Nancy Williams, and Noah Smucker from Lakewood Middle School. Congratulations.
Congratulations to all of our award winners. Moving on with our agenda this evening, item 5, approval of the consent agenda items. Those are the minutes of the April 13th, 2021 regular meeting. The personnel report tonight is corrected. Financial reports, including the April's bills list, the March treasurer's report, the March investment report, and the March journal entries. Approval of the following encumbrance listings to Skyward for the annual renewal in the amount of $61,302.50. To Johnson Controls for the annual service agreement in the amount of $28,045. To Johnson Controls in the amount of $199,109.69 for the installation of electronic entry systems at the Operations Center, Salina Education Center, Heartland, and the warehouse, and for an additional video server. To Stewart Signs in the amount of $70,957.80 for the purchase of 4 digital signs for the high school gyms. To ACT Aspire for the annual renewal in the amount of $36,528. To Curriculum Associates, Inc. in the amount of $160,795 for the iReady program at the elementary and middle schools. To Learning A to Z for the license renewal in the amount of $74,209.50. And finally, approval of the Federal Head Start, Early Head Start Supplemental Grant application for one-time activities in response to COVID-19 in the amount of $570,731 for a 2-year budget period. Is there a motion to approve that? Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Thank you. In a second.
Emma Doherty, second.
Thanks, Emma. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Item 6, public forum. If there's anyone here that wishes to address the board about a topic not on our agenda. We'll move on to item 7, action agenda, and first up, bond resolution with Greg Varnenberg. Hello.
Good evening, everyone. Greg Varnenberg with Raymond James. Appreciate the chance to be here this evening and have hopefully good news for the board. As I'm sure you remember at the April board meeting, we talked about the bond refinancing. The board adopted an authorizing resolution which gave us permission to start working on the refinancing. After that meeting, we completed the the rating request with Moody's, and pleased to report that they assigned a AA3 rating to the district, which is exactly what we had expected. And then from there, we were able to finalize the disclosure document that we use to market bonds to investors and conduct, once we had that information in the hands of investors and started generating interest in your bond issue, we then set the order period for the sale of the bonds for May 4th. And during the order period, we propose preliminary rates for those investors that are interested. We take orders from those investors and then finalize the interest rates at the end of that order period process. And we had a very good, had a very solid bond market going into that order period. We had strong demand from investors, and we're actually able to push interest rates a little bit lower at the end of that process. And then one of the last steps for finalizing the savings is we're not only selling the bonds to investors, but we're taking that money and investing it in, or putting it in an escrow fund that's used to pay off the bonds being refinanced. And so the investment return in that escrow fund is an important piece of the savings as well. And we were actually able to compare a program for direct purchase through the federal government to just taking bids for open market U.S. Treasury securities. And even the bids we received on the Treasury securities ended up helping the savings overall, actually helped by about $40,000. So the good news at the end of all of that process and locking in the new interest rates and the cost or investment rate for those open market securities, the final savings for the district ended up being $1,904,624. And the interest rate on the bonds that we were refinancing was a 2.61% interest rate. We actually locked in a new average interest rate of 1.36%. So we lowered that average interest rate by about 1.25 percentage points, or 125 basis points. And when you think back to the information had shared with the board at the April meeting, at that point in time, we were looking at savings of $1,701,947, and the average interest rate about 1.43%. So not much of a change in the interest rate from 1.43 to 1.36, but ended up saving a little over $200,000 more than we thought we were going to. So it ended up being a very nice outcome. When you take that $1.9 million in savings and add that to the prior refinancings completed by the district, it ends up bringing the cumulative savings to $12,247,021. And so it was nice to be able to add to that cumulative savings, but it's really nice to be able to look back at the periods of low interest rates and how the district taxpayers have benefited from that, and how that cumulative savings has now grown to the $12.2 million savings. But we're also, the other important part of this plan of refinancing was that we wanted to take advantage of not only the prior savings, but in the current interest rate and the savings we could capture on this issue. But you've been in a favorable position from a mill levy perspective. And so we were able to shorten up the repayment period on this portion of bonds we refinanced by a full 5 years, and do that inside of the existing mill levy of about 10.729 mills in your bond and interest fund. And so we're shortening up the repayment on this series of bonds by 5 years. That's actually pulling all of your bonds now being paid off 1 year sooner, with the final payment in 2033. And it's really interesting from my perspective to look back and think about the discussions we had with the district, and you shared with voters in the district at the time you were going through the bond election. The mill levy today is well below what was represented during the most recent bond election campaign. But then I also think back to, I had an opportunity to work with you on the prior bond election. And so the current mill levy today in your bond and interest fund is at its lowest point in 20 years. And we're able to capture some savings and repay the bonds more quickly and accomplish all of that with still being able to keep that mill levy at its current lowest level, hold that 10.729 mills for the remaining life of the bonds. So pretty exciting result for the district, and hopefully taxpayers would view that as well as a very favorable outcome. But we have locked in the savings. The 1.9 million is locked in. The new interest rates are set. Once we completed the sale of the refunding bonds, we gave the final information to Gilmore and Bell, Measure Bond Counsel, and they have taken the final numbers and interest rates and put that into the bond resolution. So the action that you would consider this evening to lock in that savings would be the adoption of the bond resolution. And then that's the last step for us then to complete the closing of the refunding bond issue. And once you adopt the bond resolution, everything will be locked in. The closing process is really just taking care of some of the paperwork. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Questions for anyone up here? Yes, sir.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the resolution for the Series 2021 General Obligation Refunding Bonds as presented.
Second? Second by Scott. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 7B, board policy with Aaron Wright.
Good evening. As you may recall, at the April board meeting, we had a work session and reviewed recommended policy changes for the district for this year. You had an opportunity to discuss, and we talked a little bit about the intent behind the changes. And we've taken any recommended changes into account and brought them tonight for you here for final action. Should you decide to do so, we're recommending the policy changes that are included in your packet this evening. Did you have any questions about any of those?
Mr. President, I make a motion we approve as presented.
Thank you. A second. Second. Motion is a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
On to 7C, resolution of the Board of Education's final action for the non-renewal contract for probationary teachers for 2021-2022.
Also at the last board meeting, you all adopted a resolution expressing your intent to non-renew a teacher's contract. As you directed, the clerk of the board mailed notice of that intent to the teacher the next day, and I'm now back to recommend final action on that non-renewal.
Up the resolution that's in the packet, calling for the non-renewal as presented.
Thank you. Second.
Amador, second.
Thank you. You have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much.
On to item 7D, 2021-2022 school calendar as it relates to the Smoky Hill River Festival.
Okay, I am bringing a recommendation to you to adjust the calendar for next school year. As you know, the Salina Arts and Humanities has scheduled this year's River Festival for September 2nd through the 5th. Usually, the festival happens in June, and that allows our teachers and our staff to be highly engaged in that festival. We have been a longtime partner with Salina Arts and Humanities, and they have been very supportive of our programming and have come into our classrooms to provide arts programming for our students. We would like to make the recommendation that we adjust the school calendar and make September 3rd, that Friday of the River Festival, a school holiday. We do have a little bit of flexibility in the calendar for inclement weather. And this change will narrow my window in the case of inclement weather, but with the ability to do the 2-hour late start, I have a little bit more flexibility to work with. And so I don't anticipate that this would be an issue for us. making this adjustment would allow our staff, our teachers, to support the programming of Salina Arts and Humanities and to engage in one of the biggest events that we have here in Salina, either through attendance or through volunteering. So at this time, my recommendation to you would be to adjust the school calendar and make September 3rd a school holiday for 1 year only. Do you have any questions?
Questions, comments? Yes, sir.
What happens if that happens to be a rainy day? Is that going to go off rain or shine?
I think that once we make the calendar adjustment, the calendar's adjusted. The River Festival, even on rainy days, and Brad Anderson is here, even on rainy days in the past, has gone forward. And so I think that once we make that adjustment for predictability for our families, that we would just need to say that that is a school holiday. Thank you for that question.
Yes.
I just have to say, I love this idea so much. Thank you, Lynn, for this good idea.
That's what I was going to say, too.
I just think it'll be a beautiful way for us to show support to a community partner that has been so incredibly supportive of what we do in our schools. And I think it's important for us to be able, for our staff to be able to engage and give back when they give so much to us. So that's the reason that we're bringing this forward, and I appreciate that affirmation.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, I agree with Ann and Mark, and I would move that we adjust the 2021-2022 calendar to make Friday, September 3rd, 2021 a school holiday as presented.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. On to action agenda item 7E, 2021-2022 Middle School Student Handbook. Wish Director.
Good evening. So last month, I brought forward the recommendations for the middle school handbook. There was a suggestion in regards to one of the entries that we had, and that was in regards to the bicycle policy. And so bicycles, scooters, skateboards, and rollerblades. And so the suggestion was to make it a little bit more universal. And so we did add wording to that to add in "and other personal transportation devices." And so that kind of gives us a statement to be able to address any concerns that we may have in regards to however students make it to the school grounds. And the rest of the items are the same from what you have seen last month. And so are there any questions?
Any questions or someone want to make a motion?
Mr. President, I move we accept the middle school student handbook as presented for 2021-2022.
Emma Doherty, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. And back with you for the Chromebook handbook.
Yes. And so last year, we did some significant updates to the Chromebook handbook to align it with our current processes. And actually, those processes have stayed in place for this school year. And so really, the only change to this would be addition of updating any dates. So the Chromebook handbook has stayed the same. And so are there any questions?
Questions or a motion? Ian?
Mr. President,
I have a quick question, if I may.
Yes.
The iReady software that we approved earlier, does that integrate well with the Chromebook? What would you say to that?
Yes, our students are able to access that software very easily and to take those assessments. And it actually, just to kind of speak to iReady, it's really given us an ability to do some other diagnostic work with our students, and it is compatible with the Chromebooks. Everything that we look at, we make sure is compatible with the Chromebook, since that is the access that we have for our students.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the 2021-2022 Chromebook Student Handbook as presented.
Thank you. In a second. Scott seconds. Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. And back again.
Yes.
Item 8A, virtual school update on our discussion agenda.
And I'm going to invite Tracy Hutton to come join me. Let me pull up our presentation.
Is this on our computer?
Presenter view.
Presenter view will get you there.
You want me to run it, or do you want to run it to have your flow?
Yeah, that might be.
I will let Tracy Hutton run our presentation tonight, and I just want to say how excited we are to be able to be here and how excited I am to have Tracy Hutton joining us. So she is our new virtual school principal, and we have spent many hours together already and look forward to many more to be able to plan an exciting adventure for our students and to be able to offer this opportunity for our students. So Tracy, I'm going to go ahead and turn it to you, and at the end, we will have time for questions or any concerns.
Hello. It's nice to see all of you. I've been a teacher in the district, so this is a new role for me, and I'm starting to recognize some faces and stuff, and so hopefully I'll be a familiar face soon. So we'll just start with a little bit of sharing the vision that we have for the virtual school. And it really starts with the 305 vision of transforming Salina and the world. And so it's really building on that, and it's taking an opportunity to fill a need, but also do it in a creative and innovative way. So it's going to do more than just provide another option. So that's what I want to talk about just for a minute. So this is kind of the motto behind it. Oh, never mind. All right, okay. So this is the motto behind our school. This is kind of what the vision is based on, and that is the world is my classroom. So just because it's virtual, it doesn't mean that, kids are, behind a screen all day. In fact, it's taking the opportunity of the flexibility that the virtual school can bring us to do some really neat, innovative things and try some new things. And I'm kind of excited about it. This is something that's been on my heart for a long time, to take some risks and try some things in education to maybe meet some needs that we haven't met before. So what I see virtual is like I said, students behind a screen all day. It's not just taking regular school and putting it in a computer form where kids are just absorbing content. What it is student and teacher driven. So it's a student and teacher collaboration. It's driven by student interest in a lot of ways. It uses real world applications, community involvement, passion projects, problem solving, the ability to make mistakes and learn from them, experiment, those kinds of things. So that's the foundation of it. What it kind of looks like, and this is really just a big picture overview for right now, but we see this in three parts. There is the online learning component. That's the traditional way that you see virtual school. So there will be some online software, but that's not all there is. There'll be in-person learning opportunities. So these will look like maybe some field trips, some bringing guests in, opportunities for the kids to actually be in person and collaborate with each other, some challenges we could put together. So a lot of different opportunities for them to actually engage with each other. Attack real world problems is the next part of the independent exploration. So independent exploration, this is where we're going to kind of take all of these things, do some cross-curricular things, because learning really isn't, segmented like we do sometimes. So some interdisciplinary things, and let kids kind of drive some independent exploration. And so this might look like I said, passion projects, or a collaboration with the teacher, the student, the learning coach, which I'll talk about in a second, and actually letting them drive some of that learning. A lot of this comes from
three core pillars of innovation. And this is based on some reading that I've done. Tony Wagner has written several books on creating innovators and how we can change schools. And he kind of shares this as a continuum, so that, play is really the first experience. So this is what will be our focus kind of for elementary. Besides learning those core things they need to learn, but providing time for that unstructured play like we did, the digging in the dirt, the experimenting, the failing, those kinds of things. And then at the middle school level, we're going to focus more on passion, letting kids, I've been doing middle school for a few years now. I understand how quickly middle school passions change, and that's okay. That's going to be okay in this situation. So they're going to, take what they've learned, but explore these different passions. And then when that dies off, that's fine. We're going to move on to something else. And then at the high school level, it's purpose. It's let's take everything that we've learned along the way and actually show that we can make a difference in the world. And so all of these things are part of innovation. And as a classroom teacher, I've noticed I've tried to do some innovative projects where kids did some self-directed things. And one of the biggest challenges I faced was kids just coming up with an idea. Often because it was school, they just shut off. But it was really hard to get them creative because they're so used to being consumers of other people's creativity and not necessarily free to play and to create and to fail and stuff on their own. So this is a unique opportunity to do this and just kind of have that impact. All of this builds curiosity. It really fuels that intrinsic motivation that a lot of students are missing right now. And so just a kind of, it's meeting a need, but it's doing it in an innovative way. Virtual does not mean isolated, and that's the one thing that I want to get across as far as my vision and the vision of the teachers that are on board is that it really doesn't have to be isolated. That doesn't mean it's going to be traditional, doesn't mean, and we don't even know exactly how often we're going to come together, but there's going to be purposeful community. We're going to use the community, experts in the community, really get community involved and really make it part of this. Some peer interaction, some problem-based learning, solving those real-world issues. One of the ideas is I would like to speak to community groups and say, hey, throw us your problems, because the thing is not in the solution, it's in the process, right? And so let's take one of your problems, one that you have as a business owner. What's a problem that our kids can tackle? You just never know what they're going to come up with through that. So because it's virtual, that's going to enable us to create these opportunities that we can't do in the traditional classroom. Do you want to speak to this?
I
All
can
right.
speak to this. So Tracy spoke to the passion that she has for the virtual program, which is the same passion that our teachers in the traditional classroom have. And so, really having a virtual school in our district allows us to embrace what is great about traditional schools, and we also have now the ability to embrace what is great about learning in a virtual manner. So it really is the combination of meeting a greater span of student needs with all of the great things we have going on in our K-12 schools now, and now we have another option to add to our plate for that K-12 experience. But there will be some differences between our virtual school and the traditional school. And so there are going to be times when parents are going to have to make some decisions and with the student and think about what is the best learning environment for that student. So there may be times when some of the traditional offerings may not be available for a virtual student. And that also means that we have to have some conversations too about the types of activities that students in a traditional sense get access to, such as KSHA activities. So the Kansas High School Activities Association, there are some guidelines that identify how we can interact with that in a virtual manner and also in a traditional manner. And that ties to some of the things that help us be able to have great schools is some of the funding that goes behind schools. So there's still some decisions that we need to make about what is that K-12 experience going to look like. And with that, we know that there may be opportunities that students don't have access to, but we want to look on the other side and think through what are the opportunities that they do have access to. And so Tracy and her team will be looking at how can we identify needs of the virtual students and be able to also have them belong and connect and be part of the community. But there will be a discussion that has to happen with families and with the school about what options are available in our traditional K-12 schools and what options may be identified in our virtual schools. And so sometimes there's going to be a balance and a conversation that's going to need to happen. And that's one of the things that will be so important as we provide information to our public and provide some, as we go forward with the next steps, which one of the things that we'll be doing is a handbook to be able to identify so families are very fully informed of what's available to them and what's not.
Right, and so this is kind of what we've, some decisions we've made so far. We're going to, keep it to 305 students. We will allow some non-resident transfers, just like we do now in traditional school. We will be requiring that students be full-time. And she kind of, I know there's some other details that I think she'll speak to here in a minute with that, but I think the thing is that the virtual school will be independent. It will have its own number. It'll be independent of the other schools. So it's going to be kind of a standalone, not a lot of cross. It's going to be as if it were its own school.
So one of the things that I spoke to kind of earlier in one of my presentations is the fact that really the landscape has been changing. And so this year we've been working through the remote landscape. And now as we kind of delve into what does that virtual landscape look like. And there are guidelines and kind of stipulations per se with KSDE and KSHA. And so as we are looking at what is best fit for our district, the first thing that I was kind of looking at is from that financial aspect. And so a full-time student in our district is something that is very important to us. And so we want to be able to meet the students' needs here in the district. And so that is one of the requirements that we have as part of board policy, but that you are a full-time student in our district. It gets a little bit gray when we think about, okay, now we have another kind of opportunity where we have a virtual school and a traditional school. And so as we look at that, yes, there are full-time USD 305 students, but there is a difference between if the student is attending on-site and attending virtually. And the guidelines that oversee that are different than what we've been experiencing with remote. So once a student actually goes on to campus and takes a class on campus, then they would be considered part-time virtual and part-time traditional. And there are some aspects to that affects our funding. And so that's one of the pieces that we have to think through. And we're working with different districts. And to be honest with you, when I say a changing landscape, the research that I did back in November and December about what school districts were doing across the state, a lot of that has changed. And we're seeing lots of movement in the sense of rethinking what virtual looks like and how schools need to identify what can they do in the virtual environment and what is kind of best for that district as the whole picture. So there's some research that we're still doing because I know that one of the things that we talk about is how important it is to be connected to a school and connected to a district. And there are many activities that connect students. And so we really do have to think through those. But once we make a decision on that, we want to make sure that we can fully communicate that to our families so they are fully informed as they're making their decision.
All right, and speaking of communicating, because there's so many different aspects that families will have to consider when making a decision, we're working on the handbook right now. That should be, I believe, in June. You'll get your first peek at that. And we're going to have information nights in June also for families to ask those questions, and we'll have more details figured out by then. We're going to do enrollment just like regular enrollment. There's going to be the online option and the walk-in enrollment. And then after that, then we'll do more of a personalized orientation where we will do the more student-driven, sit down with each one and the learning coaches and try to figure out what we need learning to look like for that particular kid. That's where we'll get the assurances in there on what is expected for, and what is your role as a learning coach, which I'll talk about in a second. What is your role as a student? What is your role as a teacher? How does this all look? So for the learning coaches, is the adult a parent or adult responsible. They're that home connection. So for the elementary school, the learning coach is going to be very involved. And this is something that is pretty standard in a lot of virtual programs. The learning coach is really hands-on, especially at the elementary level. As you get up to the higher levels, the learning coach is a little more hands-off. It's a little more student-driven. But they're the primary contact. They're the primary ones that are overseeing, they're the hands that we don't have at home. And so we'll do a lot to prepare them and to work with them for that role. Some staffing. I'm really excited about who the hires. The staff really shares the vision that we have, and they're excited to try something new and build something really great. There's 7 teachers, 3 will be elementary, 2 middle, and 2 high. It's a diverse group as far as levels of experience. We've got some virtual teachers in there and some experienced teachers and so on. And then 1 administrator. For this year, we're going to be taking up some of the unused space at Oakdale to make it kind of a smooth transition. And so we'll be using some of those rooms, and then we'll go from there. Let's see. I think this is,
Okay.
you kind of already talked to some of this, but
Okay, so with virtual school funding, when we think about the cost of a virtual school, approximately to upstart this virtual school, to hire our principals and our teachers, and also looking at the instructional resources that we need, really that is a little over $600,000 investment. And to make sure that we have teachers and staff and the instructional resources. One of the things that, kind of from that big picture, is that districts do receive funds based on student enrollment. And the student enrollment, depending upon if a student is considered a virtual student or a traditional student, the funding is a little bit different between those. So that's one of that conversation about what is the best for our district. Do we need to have a full-time student? So that way we can look at how that funding works, and where is that avenue of making sure we're being fiscally looking at what we need to do as a district, but also making sure that we understand that some of this is just because we need to do this, because that's what our community needs. So it's that conversation there. But if we have 125 students this year using the virtual funding amount, we would be cost neutral in the sense that that number of students would allow us, or would break us even per se, for the number of teachers that we have and our instructional resources. And the fact that also that we are in a school that already is established with the resources that they have. And so one of the things that we had to think about, because as we all know from this school year, things are sometimes unpredictable. And so even though that we have done some research and have got some projections on what our student enrollment may be this year, there could be a chance that we do not have 125 students. So this year we had to make sure that we had budget plans in place to cover the cost for this first year if enrollment is under 125. And so we do have that covered, and we know where that funding source is going to be if we do not have a high enough enrollment this year. Now, when we look at the enrollment that we have for 21-22, that's going to give us a lot of great insight into what we need to look at for the future in regards to budget, staffing, and location. And so depending upon how large the program is, what we forecast as how this program may grow, then we will then identify those budget things. So that'll be something that we're working on throughout the school year.
all right. And so to prepare for all of this, I've already started, even though, but we're planning to have our teachers in June to really begin to align their curriculum and to learn some of the software and really build those the ideas of what this is really going to look like, so that we can communicate that with families. We've decided on SLS for elementary software. It's just kind of the foundation. And then we'll use Edgenuity, which is something we've used for a while at the middle and high school level. And so we'll get that handbook to you for approval soon. And then we're also going to develop some frequently asked questions to help parents make the decision on what's best for them. There's not really any change for, there's not much change for the adult students in as far as the programming goes, it's still 305 boundary area. It still has the focus of diploma completion, and it is by credit hour. And the Adult Ed Center will still manage, and it'll all be located there. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about that, but.
And really, our diploma completion program has been something that we've changed over the last year, moving out to Salina Adult Education Center, and it has worked really well to have it at that location because it gives those adults access to other kinds of opportunities that our Adult Education Center brings in. So opportunities to different college preparatory classes, ESL courses, and things like that. So we're really excited to be able to continue that there and then have the K-12 where the students are at our traditional elementary building, so that way they have kind of access to all of those things that you might want for students in the K-12 arena. So questions from the group?
We threw a lot at you, so.
Yes. Actually, when I originally read the presentation, I actually had about 3.5 challenging questions.
Okay.
But you seem to have covered them.
Okay.
It doesn't seem like it's as black and white as it was written. So I'm extremely pleased to hear that. In my day job, I teach Lean Six Sigma. I'm a master black belt in that, and I also have a black belt in innovation engineering. And so it's good to hear that you're exposing them to innovation engineering at such a young age, because it is in demand in the job market. I don't know if they're going to be given a certificate in it or not, or if that's just part of the curriculum that's going to go along with that. But that is something that is very much needed. And I'm just extremely pleased to hear that you guys are trying to, from an innovation perspective with this coming on, to create that which hasn't been created, but at the same time exceed our expectations, because it's not enough to meet the need right now. I looked at 305 because of the talent that is here in the administration section of it to lead Kansas in this endeavor. I do not want to see somebody do something better than us. So you have my full support in pushing that envelope to make sure that we exceed everybody's expectation, because we can't afford to lose students because of something crazy. We've got to make sure that we are able to reach everybody where they are and get them to where they need to be. So if I had a hat, I'd tip it to you. I'm very, very impressed with what you're saying.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a couple things. Excuse me. How many kids were in remote this year? Do you know?
Yeah, it started out a little over 600 students, and now I think we're right around 300. And so approximately 100 at elementary, middle, and high school. I didn't bring those numbers here with us. But one of the things that we tried to do during the school year is that as we found the remote option was not necessarily the best option for that family, or because of the changing kind of health concerns, they were able to get back to a traditional school, we did have those students transfer back to their traditional school. And so that number decreased because of safety concerns were no longer there. And then also we found that when she spoke to learning coaches, I think that's critical. And some families found that they could not support their student in the way that they really wanted to support their student. And so that'll be an important piece when we do the orientations with families, is because we want to fully inform families of the responsibility we're taking on, but also the responsibility that they're taking on to support their student in the environment that they choose. But that supportive student is going to be important. And we didn't say parent, we said learning coach, because that is what's going to, it may not be the parent, it may be grandma, it may be the neighbor, it may be, we don't know. We just want to be available for whatever circumstance a family may need.
Okay, and the other question, it's sort of in the weeds, but I worry about, especially the elementary kids, how do you do PE? And we talk about all the people in the country and the world that talk about their weight gain over the course of COVID because they spent so much time in remote access environments, and already obesity is a problem, and grade school kids are as susceptible as anybody, and I worry about that.
And that's exactly, you know, the way ours is structured, so that we don't have that. It is not intended for them to be sitting behind a computer all day. I'm not sure exactly how much it will be, but those special kind of things will be built in. And those are the things our teachers will build in for those kids, because that's the last thing we want to. We want them out and playing and learning and doing those things beyond just consuming. So those will all be built into there.
And just to add to this, this is where we're so lucky in the sense of actually experiencing a year remote, because we learned a lot of lessons, and three of her new staff came from the remote environment. And so they're going to be able to bring some of that insight and knowledge of what can we do. And now we have the ability, hopefully, to bring kids in and to do different things out in the community where the community's kind of been shut down for a while. So lots of excitement, but I do agree with you. We do want them to be physically active, because an active body is also good for an active brain.
Yes.
First of all, I love your excitement and your energy and your vision. It's really enlightening and exciting. When you said play, passion, and purpose, my head just went ding, 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 school marathon. So I'd love to have a time to talk to you about possibly incorporating the school marathon virtually with your elementary kiddos.
Sure.
I don't know, are these kids going to be kids that would have been in our schools anyway? Or, so we're just in a weird situation because we got the funding for the marathon 2 years ago, and we didn't use it last year, so we have that set funding. I want to make sure we would have money to cover it, but I think that could be a pretty exciting collaboration and talks to your sitting point. So I would love to get a chance to visit with you at some point about that.
Yes.
And I would assume that many of the students are Salina Public School students. There may be students that haven't been in our schools, but they live in our area and have been homeschool students. And so, you know, or students that have gone to other virtual programs. So, yeah, so they will be, you know, once they become our virtual student, they are 305 students. And so just to kind of reassure that.
Anyone else? Questions, comments?
Your 125 number, that's across all grades, K-12?
Yeah, that's across all grades, K-12. And so in June, we'll bring a handbook to you. And the handbook, I think, will really, and you'll have it ahead of time as part of the board packet, to be able to see the guidelines there. And so that really gets kind of into the nit and gritty of what are going to be the expectations of our virtual students. And so hopefully that'll answer some more questions as well.
Anything else? Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Very exciting stuff.
Thanks.
Moving on with our discussion agenda, item 8B, transitions program with Mr. Mike Lowers, who is on light control and rushing to the podium.
Sorry, I'm running my own lights here.
You're good.
Thanks for having us this evening. It's great to see you. If you'll remember, we had a work session where we talked about using the Salina Education building recently, and we mentioned about the possibility of the transitions program going there. So I'm here this evening with Brandy Callahan. I'm not really sure how many of you know Brandy, but Brandy is a coordinator on the CKCI administrative team who does an awesome job, and she leads our 18 to 21-year-old programming. So I would be remiss not to say a lot of what we're talking about this evening is really her dream, her goal, and working every day with students that sometimes have some pretty significant needs, and wanting to find ways to really meet the future needs of those kids for employment and to be productive citizens after they leave school with us. So we're excited to have her here with us today. So I'll invite Brandy to jump in, and she's not going to step on my toes. She can jump in any time that she feels like it here. So, we of course have an 18 to 21-year-old program at South High School right now. And if you guys will remember when we had the last bond issue, South High is such an awesome facility, and the school district was so good to us, you know, for our program. But the 18 to 21-year-old program, it's a beautiful classroom, but it is one room. And if you've gone there and toured, it's the room that has like an apartment-like setting, and which has been a fantastic facility for us. But truly, I think we've outgrown it. So when the old Opportunity Now building, as we'll call it, came available, that's where our dreaming really began there, to look at that facility. So really, that Salina Education Center, the name of that building would not change, but we would really like to start a program called Transitions and move it over to that facility. And of course, that's located, again, we talked about this with the land that the school district owns versus the city. That's all very confusing, but it is at 219 South 3rd Street. It's in a great location in conjunction with the downtown Salina. It's just really 2 blocks straight east of the new hotel. If you've been down there, you walk 2 blocks down and you're right there on Main Street. So again, we'd like to ask for a proposal, propose that we use that facility. So again, it'd serve those kids that are age 18 to 21 off the school campus in a business-like setting. So that's kind of the idea. All the 18 to 21-year-old kiddos who are at South High right now or would be in the future would transfer over to the new program. And who might this serve? Now, we'll talk about this here in a second, but Project Search, and many of you have had the opportunity to go and see Project Search at the hospital. That was set up for 18 to 21-year-old kids and to help them gain employment after they get out of school. And a statistic I don't have on here, but those kids who go through Project Search there, if without Project Search, their employment level is less than 20%. And if they go through Project Search, it's about 80%. That's how much of a difference that this highly focused training program makes for those kids. When we're full there, we have 14 kids in slots there, and it's all housed at the hospital. That's leaving out a group of kids of 2 groups of kids to consider here. One, there's a group who have some pretty significant cognitive needs and maybe don't really fit Project Search. They can't quite get to that level. But they're kids also who, when they leave school, are underemployed, that we're not, if you think of least restrictive environment, they could be employed at a higher level than they are because they're missing some skill sets. So you have that group of kids, don't fit Project Search, but they need something beyond what they're getting right now. The second group are Project Search kiddos that they're kids like everybody else. Developmentally, they're not quite ready at the age of 18 to go to Project Search. If you've been there, that's such an awesome program, but it would be a little tough. If I was them, and they exit school, they're done with all their coursework, they could get their diploma, but they stay and they go to Project Search. They're leaving the school, they're going to the hospital, they're there for 9 months in an intensive training program. Some kids, when they turn 18, aren't quite ready to do that. So the transitions program for that group would mean that those kids could stay, they could go to transitions for 2 years and then go to Project Search. So again, it's putting another layer in there, and I don't know, you guys probably have had your own kids or nieces and nephew, I don't know who can't use work skills, you know, as far as how they're going to go out and operate in the world. So this would be a great opportunity for that group of kids too. So our end goal is employment in the least restrictive environment. You think of, okay, we got kids and maybe they have some more significant needs. Well, the way I look at that is, you know, maybe they would end up with no employment whatsoever, and with this program, they would end up with employment. Or maybe they, like I mentioned earlier, they wouldn't be underemployed. They would have a higher level of employment, perhaps. So.
And in a different environment. These students go into the high school in 9th grade, and they now stay in that high school setting for 7 years. And so it's that high school setting for 7 years. When I got to start 18 to 21, Lynn was at South High with me, and we got to start that program together. And I believe we sat down at that table and dreamed of where that could be outside of South High School. And so now we're actually getting to hopefully get to recognize that dream, because it is a different environment. We want them to see that outside of a school building, outside of their high school building at least. It would still be a school building, but we can make it feel like a different setting than their high school setting, so that it feels like it's a more independent setting. We can make it feel more independent and start fading away a little bit differently than when they went to high school.
Project Search, you know, you see that every year. I'm really blessed. I've always been able to go and do the first practice interview with the kids. And some of them, they look kind of terrified at first. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, they like took me out of my school and now I'm at this hospital all day and I got to wear the right clothes. And, you know, they start working on all that stuff right away. And then we're going to have our award program. I think it's next week. And you go there and it's phenomenal. It's amazing how they have transformed, you know, so. That leaving, and that's why we talk about this is more, it's a school setting, but it's really more of a business setting. It's not the same as being in that school. So it's really setting up a whole different environment for them. That transition concept too, if you kind of follow the state and federal government, there's been a big push, as you know, at the preschool level, but there's also been an equal push at the transition level for 18 to 21-year-olds that we do these very things. So this is, you know, like we were talking about the virtual school, which that's all exciting. This is too. This is just another group of kids that we're finding a new way, a better way, I think, to meet their needs. So Project Search, by the way, has been around since 2011. Holy smokes, it's hard to believe it's been that long. But they're just thriving away down there. So in 2016, like I mentioned, the program was expanded, and that's where we got that new classroom at South High, which has been awesome. We're just continuing to evolve, though. So this is the next, really the next level, the next way to bring it to a new level yet. So how are we going to do it? Well, we've thought about, we being Brandy probably, but so there are different tiers or training modules. If you think about what we've got right now, it's a classroom, there's an apartment setting, and you think of how functional can a kiddo be out in the world once they get out of school. So the apartment setting was all about, and again, if any child needs to learn how to make their bed and do laundry, and it's all that kind of stuff, but this would be taking it to an employability level also. Let's see. So an upside here too is, you know, space is always a premium, and South High isn't a very old building, but I know that Dr. Kipp, he's a pretty cool guy, the new principal there at South High, and the administration. You know, they can always use the space, and that is really a nice space. So I think they have some designs on perhaps it could be a nursing classroom or something like that. It's kind of what they've been talking about. So this space will be quickly used if you guys approve us moving the program there. And of course, the Salina Education Center was built to educate kids, and this would be another opportunity for us to do that just in a new way. So, let's see. Okay. So how will it differ from Project Search? Project Search, as you know, we have 14 kids there when we're full. There's an application and interview process and acceptance process. The difference will be, this will be a broader group of kids. There is no application interview process. We will start educating that group of kids there, period. So that'll be a little different. So it'll be a broader stroke of kids there. Employment for kids, of course, falls on a continuum. So if you think about, you know, can kids go out and work in a business? There are kids who the least restrictive employment for them could be working in a work program at OCCK, and that's awesome. You know, that's what works for them for employability. But it is a continuum, but not underselling the kids. You know, having them at the highest possible level that they can. So, and if we move the Ed Center, again, the modules will be something we'll look at. So what could they look like? And we're going to have a map on here in a moment, but we've kind of tried to brainstorm. And now here's kind of the connection. So if you think we're downtown, you can walk 2 blocks over and you're in the downtown area. We have a beautiful downtown Salina now. It's just awesome. And thinking of the businesses that are down there, with the Project Search concept, they're within that hospital, obviously. This would be up and down Main Street. So what's there, and if we go through these steps, how can kids get to where they're actually employed in a downtown business? So the modules we've thought of, but of course these could change as jobs change. You know, the hope, of course, is we have new businesses come down there, you know, as time passes. But so in the different rooms in the transitions program, we could have one where we work on office worker, mailroom, office assistant as a module, a janitorial module. Our janitor at Hageman actually goes up and does provides service at that building, but with this, the kids could really do most of it themselves. So, restaurant dining area module and food prep module. If you'll recall, we did have exceptional caterers there, so we have quite a kitchen. So we can model that. Hotel module, that'd be kind of crazy if we didn't have that since it's down the street. Independent living module would be another one we thought of. Retail clothing module, and I'm trying to get like Penny's to give us equipment. They got lots of stuff sitting out there, so maybe they'll give us some rounders and things, but you know, I'll sure pursue that. Grocery store module, because of course we have a grocery store downtown. And somebody else brought up recreation facility module, because the rec center downtown and the new bowling alley, the alley down there, both, they're hurting for workers just like everybody else right now. So we thought that could be good. And then we tried to think of a business. You know, is there something, because, you know, we've had such success with exceptional caterers. Was there something, and we're still going to do the cooking part because, you know, we all love cookies, you know, that kind of stuff. But also, what could we do that also mirrored something? And there are several T-shirt businesses downtown, so we thought that could be a business they could run. And really, you know, you can get a T-shirt press, and it's not terribly expensive or whatever, but that's something that, a good skill I think that kids could learn there. So this is kind of how we've mapped it out, and I really apologize. I was gonna like dazzle you and show you something really cool, but Brandy got this set up so you click on each of these rooms and it opens up and shows you what each room looks like, and I couldn't get the darn thing to work, so I'm so sorry about that. But this kind of gives you a sense of how we would use the different spaces there. So there's already a tornado room, but we added a restroom, a shower, and a washer dryer. So we can really do all kinds of mock things there. Also, you know, built into this, these are kids who can have some interesting days sometimes. So we have a little sensory room there. Not a timeout room or anything like that, but the thought is all, again, employment. So if you, like at Project Search, sometimes we'll have kids that, they're awesome kids, but they are kids and they have their days. The idea with like a sensory room here would be if and when you're employed, you can have a bad day, and how can you take care of your own sensory needs? So in other words, how can you address your own needs and not, have an employment problem or get in trouble with your boss and those kinds of things? So that's kind of the approach. Remember, these are kids 18 to 21, so they're reaching that age where I've got to recognize that I'm not having a good day, and how can I address that? So that'll be kind of our focus there.
And do it appropriately. So like we talked about in our sensory room, there will be no swing. So if you'll think about some of our sensory rooms across the district, we have a beautiful swing, and the kids utilize that swing a lot in their sensory rooms, and they love the sensory room swings. But when you go out on a job and you go to a break room, there's not usually a swing. So what sensory needs can you meet when you're out on a job on your break? And so trying to get them to work on what sensory needs can I meet when I'm out on a job? Can I go on a walk? Can I listen to music? What kind of needs can I meet when I'm actually out on a job, and trying to utilize those needs at school while we're at transitions. And so changing that thought process a little bit, because we weren't doing those things while we were in the school building. So changing that thought process a lot, because our setting is different. So we're going to call it a break room. We're not going to call it the sensory room. It's going to be the break room.
Hey, as assistant principal, I used to take walks. Good Lord, I needed them sometimes, I can tell you. Working with little kids sometimes in middle school. So again, the geographic location, that plays a huge role in all of this. I'm so excited about that. Our downtown is just awesome now, so I think that this is a great way to pull that all together. And those partnerships, just like we have with the hospital, they have been so great to us. Same thing, we just have to develop those partnerships with those downtown companies, and in the end, it's kind of like Project Search. People are fighting over hiring our kids. That's what we want. That's our end goal, is that they're so well prepared that people just love to have them as employees. So thinking about this in a tiered system. You can't go from 0 to 100 here. Kids are kids. So as they come into this, we envision tier 1 would be, on that map, there's classroom instruction. Just like in Project Search, that's a great model for all this. We have to work on soft skills. We have to work on employability and many of those skills. So there's classroom instruction first. Tier 2 then will be modules in that building. So we talked about those different modules we have, that they work in a mock grocery store setting, stocking. I've priced out a cash register, so they can learn some of that. There's just a lot of those skills there. Tier 3 would be an internship with a local business and a para or a job coach supporting them. So they go downtown, they're working, and you think of, like we do at Project Search, we call it fading support. They're there right up front with them quite a bit at the front, and then they fade away and let them, work. And then tier 4 would be they get a job. So that's kind of how we're looking at the different levels that we would go through. On the budget, of course, that's always important. Staffing, we're looking at budget neutral. We would transfer a teacher and perhaps 3 paras total over there from South High. Equipment, we're looking at about $4,000 for the modules, and then we'd secure donated equipment too, and that would fall under CKCIE funding. Right now, it's weird, but we have some ESSER money, which is just strange for special education, but this seems like perhaps, and I don't want to speak for the future budget people, but that might be a good way to look at it. And then there's a curriculum called Project Life, which is part of Project Search that they've always dreamed of having, but they've never had. This could be a great time for the co-op to buy that. And that curriculum could also be used at South High, at Central High also for other students. So I think that would be a great way to do it. We've talked a lot about administrative support because, you know, like Project Search is over there running with Artis, and she could run anything, I think. But this one, you know, in this facility, I think it'd be important if Brandy at least officed out of there, and there is office space. She would still be our secondary coordinator going to the high schools. But we'd actually move her out of Hageman. She would be officing out of this building. So she'd still come over to our meetings, and we'd still, you know, we all can talk a lot, but it's by email or, you know, just like you guys do too. But I think that would be important that she would be over there to get things off and running. So, and then the other support staff, they'd be existing co-op people too. You're going to have a school psych. You could have OT and PT support, speech support, just like the kids have right now, but it would be part of our itinerant staff who travel around, so would go over there too. Let's see. So our target really would be about 12 kids is what we envision right now. And really, we're thinking the kids are going to South High, but this could expand. That's kind of what happened with Project Search. All of a sudden, Solomon, you know, it's really individualized. So Solomon has a kiddo, and they go, wow, this John could just really benefit. There's no reason John couldn't come. You know, it would grow and develop as we go. So that would be the idea. Sometimes it's just the physical distance that are barriers, but Project Search, that's grown to where I've seen kids riding over an hour on a bus, you know, coming to the program because it's that good. So that's what we would want. That'd be our goal.
And something else I would like to see is if we can get the modules up and going and really set them up well, I would not want them to just be used for the students for 18 to 21. If we have these modules up and running, I wouldn't see that there wouldn't be a need for, if a student from Central or South needed to come learn those vocational skills, but they weren't necessarily going to be a student that needed extended years for 18 to 21, why would they not have a elective that they took to come utilize those modules? That just seems like a useful option for them to come take that elective, utilize those modules, come and take that as an elective to use for a skill that they need to hone in on. Come take that as an elective, as a careers class or whatever that is that they need to come over, use that, have staff that come with them, hone those skills for their vocational skills, and utilize that when we already have it set up. It's there. We might as well be using that as a resource, having those students come from South and Central or Opportunity Now. Wherever they need to come from, they need to come and utilize that for those other students.
So it makes a great point. Being there from the age of 18 to 21 is an option for parents, but is not required. So a child can just go 4 years in high school and graduate and go on. Knowing that, yes, if you had a junior, that you could engage in that at that point. There's really no restriction on this, but it's having that facility, having that ability to do it would be very invaluable. So our next steps, what would we do? Well, we finalize our staff assignments. Brandy has already been preemptive on the teacher, and so she has been working. We've got somebody figured out there if this goes through. There's always, I don't want to freak out Chris Upson, but there's always the transportation, you know, making some shifts there. Lunch, you know, how that would work, you know. And then securing some furnishings. We'd order our curriculum and materials that we talked about. Continue the design and development of the modules, I think, would always be going. Somebody's always going to come up with a new idea, a better way to do it, so that's great. And then building those relationships with the people downtown. One last thing I'll leave with you here is the people, and you know, a school is a school. A teacher is the education. The pairs are the education. It's not the building, you know. So this is kind of like Project Surge. It's made up of those people, and they are so important to making it work. And this one is the same because, you know, there's Brandy will be housed there, but then she's got a big job. She's going to go out and do all her other stuff. So you got to have a teacher that has the ability to juggle a lot, and job coaches who can go down and work with the kids at the business and fade back and let them make mistakes and learn from them, you know, so those people that we have are critical to all this. So we've really been talking about that and honing in on who could do this best, so. Brandy, did I leave anything out? So that's kind of our proposal. So Mark, do you have a question for us?
Yeah, just a quick one. I imagine you can analyze the younger grades coming up through the middle schools and so forth and have a prediction of what future enrollment might look like. I appreciate the 12 model for this. Is that going to be sufficient? Clearly, there's going to be more space here than there is in the current. Do you think it'll all work for the future projections?
Yeah, I think it'll feed upon itself. Yeah, I definitely, I see no reason we wouldn't be up in the 20s, you know.
Next year, we lose 2 and we gain about 10 out of just the FLC side. And I would see that, when I say FLC, I'm just talking about a program out of South High. And so I would also predict that, as I talk about the ALC side, which is another program that we have both at Central and at South, I would predict another few students coming out of that, just because I think that they're going to see the usefulness of the vocational side of that we just haven't had the opportunity to have that to give to the students before. So I think that we're going to see that both staff and parents see the usefulness and what we can give to those students that we just haven't had the opportunity to give them before. So I would see that we're going to see a few more students the following year, just for what we would usually see going into the 18 to 21 normally, and then probably more coming from programs that we wouldn't necessarily have seen in the past.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You bet.
I was making a list of questions. I think I'm down to 2.
All right. Hey, we
Through
did
the
pretty well there, Mr.
presentation.
Fletcher.
One, I think you danced around. Through CKCIE, this is not just 305 students, is this cooperative students, so we could have students coming in from other communities, other districts to
We
be a part of
could.
this.
Yeah, we're just going to start with the kids at South High, but yeah, there's no limit to that. Right now, we have, you know, like Minneapolis, they kind of have their own little mini program. And I don't think that's going to change because the parents in that community want their kids to go to school there. But it's going to open that opportunity. You hope there'll be that special, that Minneapolis kid or somebody in Solomon or Abilene who maybe they are going to school there till they're 21, but this is going to be a new opportunity that they didn't have in the past. It's especially those kids, you know, because right now they're thinking about Project Surge. They know about it. They'll have kids come interview. Sometimes they fit it, sometimes they don't. This would be different, that this would be another, perhaps they don't fit it, but they would fit transitions perfectly.
Yeah. Rites of passage are very important. We're getting ready to celebrate graduation, which is a huge one. And I see this as being a big thing for those students to be able to gain that rite of passage into a new environment. When do we want to do it? What's our timeline? What's our focus?
To get this going?
Yeah.
August.
Okay?
That's our timeline.
Go ahead.
So once they enroll in this program, are they considered USD 305 fully enrolled or partially enrolled, or how does that work?
They're fully enrolled.
So my question was, this is on the discussion agenda, I'm saying August. Any objections to moving this right on along to the action?
Bless you, sir. That'd be
Please.
great.
I had questions on the logistics of that. So we would approve the building usage, but the rest of the changes would be made by Board of Control. Is that correct?
What they would do is, the CKCIE administrators would work to structure the program, and then they would work with us as the sponsoring district for what that program was going to look like. The Board of Control has been notified that this is something we are proposing to you, and that we're asking you for permission to use the USD 305 facility in this way. But really, the direction and the vision and the leadership for this will come from the special education administrators and the teachers that they've identified that would be a fit for that position. Does that answer your question? Okay.
And I feel the Board of Control, this is additional options for their kids, so I feel very supported that they would be behind this totally, and have been.
I could make a motion.
I would if I may.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the 18 to 20-year-old program, henceforth to be known as the Transitions Program, to move from Salina South to the Salina Education Center beginning the 2021-22 year. I would add further, given Mr. Lauer's pending retirement, that notes be made that we be kept informed of the transitions in the process, and we wish good luck to everyone. Long motion, that's what I got.
I'm sure Deborah got it all.
Could you modify that to be 21 instead of 20?
18 to 21.
18 to 21.
I don't know what I said, but that's what I meant.
And I'm sure Deborah got that too. So, okay, there's a motion. There's a second by Jim. Any further discussion, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
You have your work set out.
And just a quick note, thank you, everybody, for all your time and support of our kids. I really appreciate it, so listening to my ramblings. So thank you very much. It's been an honor, so.
Thank you, Mike.
Is that your computer?
Now complete with our discussion agenda, moving on to item 9, school board reports and upcoming dates of importance. Just a reminder about graduations, both Sunday, May 23rd, Salina High School South at 2 p.m. and Salina High School Central at 5 p.m. It will be a long afternoon, but exciting to see some kids, and like you said, rite of passage. Excited to celebrate it with them this year. So we'll do board reports, starting with Mr. Bandry down there.
So I had the opportunity to read to a kindergarten class via Zoom, unfortunately, but that was still nice to engage. It was a sunset classroom, and as you might suspect, I asked my wife to pick out a book, and we read One Dog Canoe. I recommend it highly to all those who are not familiar with the book. And it was fun even through Zoom. I asked a couple questions, and some kindergartners are shy, some aren't, and the ones who are not were very willing to engage. So it was a great experience. I enjoyed it tremendously and look forward to when we can do these things personally again. My wife and I attended the Salina Central Art Exhibit. I've forgotten exactly when that was now, but it was between the last meeting and now, and it was just really fun to see the parents and students there. Again, COVID-limited attendance from what I understand it usually has been, but I'm always amazed by artistic people, and this was no exception, is what it comes down to. Tomorrow is a busy day. I'm going to go ahead and report on it now. The Salina Education Foundation board meets, and immediately after that, Dana and I have the staff negotiation session. And then on Thursday, I have Smoky Hill Education Service Center board meeting. So a number of things going up pretty quickly here. I apologize to all for missing the retirement celebration. I was in California helping my son and his fiance, so I felt I had a good excuse, but I wish I could be two places at once, you understand. So that's all I got.
Thank you.
Well, I attended the art exhibit too. That was fun. Got to vote on your favorites, and it's always fun. I got my second vaccination shot, yes, a couple weeks ago, and I got to read to second graders at Sunset. I read the book Because on Zoom, and it was really fun. You get to like aim your book at the camera, so you could kind of move it around, make it pretty exciting. I attended the Salina Adult Education Center Advisory Board meeting, and I think I have this right, that there's a person at the state adult education level they're short a staff person, so Kelly Mowbray is helping the Board of Regents with adult education at the state level. And Salina is one of the only adult education programs in the state that produces their own curriculum tailored to their own students, and they're hoping to influence other places around the state to do that same thing. And she talked about hosting the diploma completion program, how excited she is about that. I attended the retirement event at Salina Stadium. I admired the way Ms. Exline quickly adjusted to the long delay on the time she said a word till it came out through the speakers, a couple seconds. That's pretty distracting. And I delivered a You Make a Difference award to Molly Paradis at Hughesner. She was very surprised and thrilled. And we began negotiations with NEA Salina this week, and we're looking forward to a process that builds on the trust that we've developed in the past. Thank you, that's all.
If I may, real quick, I failed to note that I delivered a Make a Difference awards at Lakewood and Oakdale as well.
Very good.
I too attended the 25-year and retirement reception. I read to Sunset fourth graders, which was very fun. I do look forward to being in the classroom next year instead of on Zoom, and attended the Salina Central High School art exhibit.
Parks and Rec meeting, Gabe and I were there. Also the retirement reception, negotiations with Ann, some You Make a Difference awards. And just to follow up a little bit on Salina Adult Education, they're having the struggle that many employers are, is finding help. So they've got several openings trying to fill currently. They're staying online right now with their curriculum, but they've had 4 diplomas this year throughout the online process. So quite a deal there.
Very good. Scott?
Attended the Heartland meeting. I was able to finally got into a Central softball game. Got to see them and South play as well. I did the retirement function as well.
I attended the retirement and teacher award at Central and the years of service, and then attended the principal reception, and then was able to make a difference award at Coronado to the school nurse Jessica Owens, which was really appreciated very much.
Very good. I too received my second vaccine last week, the most I've been to JCPenney's in a long time. Attended a CKCIE Board of Control meeting last month. Lots of discussions about ESSER 2 federal COVID relief funding, and there was a committee set up to discuss that further, and then staffing preparations for next school year. And then also, like many, attended the retirement reception at Salina Stadium. And it was a particular honor for me to present gifts on behalf of the board and the district to both my kindergarten and first grade teacher who retired this year. So a great group of retirees who have given a lot to the district, and in addition to the other teachers we recognize this evening. So thankful for all that our staff has done, especially over the past 14 or so months as we put up with some craziness, and they've been on the front lines of that. So thank you to all of you. On to the superintendent's report with Superintendent Exline.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple updates. We, as you know, the Salina Area Technical College property transfer is set to occur on July 1st. And during our last month's study session, we recommended that we actually transfer the Salina Adult Education Center property with that. And so we are currently working on the adjustment of the agreement Aaron has been working really hard on that, as has Chris, and so I just want to give a nod to them and thank them for that work. That revised agreement will be on the June agenda for your approval and for your consideration and any questions that you have at that time. But we are looking forward to seeing the Salina Area Technical College take flight after all of these years on their own in that property. And they have been very appreciative of your support as we were making that transition. I do want to just highlight that the last day for our students is May 27th. That is coming quickly. And then the last day for our teachers is May 28th. And so winding down very quickly, our seniors actually end a week early. They have had their last Monday and their last Tuesday. They'll have, next week, and then they're done. So they are, their career is coming to an end quickly, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them at graduation and having that celebration. The last thing that I'd like to update you on is just the legislative update. I do want you to know that after months of working on K-12 budget, they did adopt a K-12 budget that does fund the Gannon expectation for school funding. In addition, they did extend the high density at risk until 2024. You'll remember that high density at risk money brings in about $1 million, and that we were really hoping that they would remove the sunset clause on that high density at risk money. They did not remove the sunset clause, but they did. That is still funded. It is going to be money that we will still receive to meet our students' needs that have some really pretty significant learning needs and challenges. So we're thankful that we have the budget at the state level approved and can move forward now, working with our teachers through the negotiations process that we started last night, that your team started last night. So thank you.
Thank you. We do have one executive session on our agenda, item 11A for negotiations. We need 15 minutes for that. There's a motion in the packet if someone would like to read it. Is that scratching your head or raising your hand?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 7:20 for 15 minutes for the purpose of discussing employer-employee negotiations, because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might jeopardize resolution of the negotiation issues, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 7:35 in the board conference room.
Thank you. In a second. Thanks, Ian. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. We'll move from this room to the board conference room for our executive session, and we'll come back to this room for any potential action after the executive session and to adjourn the meeting. Thanks. We are back in open session. We have no action to take following that executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Thank you. And a second?
You got it.
Scott, seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Have a great night.